And I was like, great, this should be easy. We'll get like 100 people in a room. He was like, no, no, no. I'm thinking like big. I'm thinking like 1,000 people in the first year. And I have never, I've never done anything of that scale in marketing. I've never run an event before. I never sold tickets. I never, booked a venue and got speakers.
We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit card debt.
I still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Our sponsor for this episode is our 14-day video script challenge.
Yes, we are sponsoring our own show.
Yes, we are.
Welcome back to From Poop to Gold. I'm your co-host, Benton Crane, and CEO of Harmon Brothers. Today on the show, I am joined by a very special guest who I'm very excited to have here. I've got Dave Gerhardt with me. Now, Dave is, without him even knowing it, he's kind of become one of my mentors. So a lot of people don't realize, but I didn't grow up in the marketing world at all. I never studied it. I was never part of it. When I joined Harmon Brothers, I came in as the data geek. And so I've kind of been on a learning journey myself through the whole Harmon Brothers history. I've been learning all about what marketing is and how to do it. And so I have lots of mentors out there. Some, have already been on the show, Russell Brunson, Ryan Dice. In fact, Ryan is the one who pointed me in Dave's direction and said, I need to know Dave Gerhardt. And so this is an interview that I've been excited about for some time because I've been following Dave and reading everything that Dave puts out there, and he's become a bit of a mentor. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Dave.
That's crazy. Those two guys are like legends to me in marketing, and so it's amazing to share what's on my mind, and I'm learning as we go. So it's cool to hear. Yeah, you kind of got me speechless. So I appreciate that.
Well, hey, those guys are they're legends for pretty much everyone, and definitely for you and me both. So yeah, we have tons to learn from them, but I also really appreciate everything that I get to learn from you, and I'm excited for you to get to share some of that with our audience. So kind of continuing on that introduction. So Dave is the CMO of Privy, right? And the former marketing director at Drift.
So right now I'm at Privy, and Privy is we're an e-commerce marketing platform, which means that we basically help you stuff. And if you're an e-commerce brand, it could mean you have a store on Shopify, used to basically do all the marketing for your store, email, website conversion, and text messaging. And before that, I was at Drift, which is a conversational marketing software company. So I've kind of only been in marketing software. And it's been meta spending a decade doing marketing at marketing software companies has really kind of forced me to learn marketing. And it's the thing that I'm probably the most passionate about. Like it is kind of like it's my job, but it's also my hobby, and I love doing it and love talking about it, and just I love the creativity of it. I love the challenge of it. And I love the feedback loop that you get. Like I'm addicted to this feeling, and I know this now, but I'm addicted to creating something, having a crazy idea, going on a walk, having a crazy idea, going back to the computer, creating it, launching it, having people message you, email you, share it, see people come in, customers come in, whoever. That's the part of marketing that I've realized now that I'm addicted to, and that's the thing that I just keep trying to chase through the.
So you run marketing at marketing companies, and you mentioned that's kind of meta. What are the challenges that come with that?
I mean, I think that the challenges are you're usually marketing to a business where there's not necessarily it's not always direct response marketing where I'm showing you this ad, I'm sending you this email, you're going to go buy this thing. Where the goal is oftentimes to create a longer term relationship, or you need to get to somebody in the company, and that's really hard to track. And so you don't always necessarily know hey, I'm going to do this thing, and here's exactly what I'm going to get back for it. And so I think that makes it challenging. The other challenge is just marketing to people who do marketing, right? It's everyone's going to call out, I've never had a typo without somebody taking a screenshot and calling it out and wanting to put me on blast or call you out on stuff. And so I do like that challenge because I can actually, but I like it because I can actually speak to hey, I am you, right? Like the greatest marketing lesson is to actually like get inside of the head of the people that you're trying to sell something to. And I am the person. And so that is like, that's the fun part, but it's also a challenge, right? It's like, how a chef would feel, at a restaurant, like they're gonna judge everything that you put on the menu. So I definitely feel that part of it.
Very cool. Let's go back in time. This is the Poop to Gold podcast, and we found that every successful person out there has their own Poop to Gold journey, and I want to hear about yours. So take me back in time to one of those points in your journey or your career where you had this crap moment that you didn't know how you were going to come out the other side of it, and take us to the circumstances around that.
Oh man, I got to come up with an example of poop to gold. I'll give you one. I think one example for me was when I was at Drift in really like first year of the company. My boss David, who's the CEO, gave me a challenge and said like, hey, we want to do our first user conference this year. And I was like, great. Like, we kind of have a little bit of an audience. This should be easy. We'll get like 100 people in a room. We'll throw out an Eventbrite invite. We'll do it locally here in Boston and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no. I'm thinking like big. I'm thinking like 1,000 people in the first year. And I've never done anything of that scale in marketing. I've never run an event before. I never sold tickets. I never, booked a venue and got speakers. Like, I just was kind of good at writing, and I turned that into like, blogging and writing emails. And so all of a sudden I had to figure out like how to put on that event, and there was no clear budget. And it was like, that was probably the moment, the biggest moment of anxiety that I've had in my marketing.
So he's thinking like order of magnitude bigger than where your mind was going with this. So you're at like 100, and he's like, no, I need 1,000. So what do you do?
Because I understand now why, which is like, sure, any company can go out in the first year and like get 100 people to go to your conference. But if we could say that we got 1,000, like the power of that would be amazing from a marketing perspective. The pictures of that event that day, just like, and it actually happened. So there, like, I honestly the first thing for me was like looking at a role model. It's like everything to me now in marketing is like, it's already been done. And so number one is like, who else has already done this, and who's done a good job? And so I looked really closely at SaaStr, which was like a big event in our space that grew from, they had maybe a couple thousand people in the first year to like 15,000 people 2-3 years later. And I've been on their email list forever. And so I literally just dug through my inbox and started like screenshotting examples of that event and how they drove signups, and started like work backwards from how they did it. Okay, well, they didn't announce all the speakers at once. They kind of started to drip them out. And so like that gave us just a little bit of a framework to get started where, okay, I don't have to make this whole thing up on the spot. Let's go find somebody who's done this before. So like first was like modeling out who's done a good job. The second was like working backwards from that day and thinking about like, okay, we know that we're going to have 10, 15 speakers and they're all going to be on stage that day. Are we just going to like put the website up and sell tickets? Like, how are we going to do this? And so like we got out on a whiteboard and literally just mapped out like, okay, what are the different tracks of speakers that we could have? Who are they? Do we know people that can get intros to them? And we focus on kind of getting one or two bigger name people, because the bet was that like if we could get one or two bigger name people, it would be like a snowball effect to get more. So like, you reaching out to me and saying like, hey, hey Dave, will you come on my podcast? Before this, we had Russell Brunson and Ryan Dice on. Like, I'm going to be like, oh shoot, yeah, of course, that seems legit. And I think the same is true with marketing that event. So then we worked back from like getting big name speakers and really just like stuck to the basics of marketing, which is like, we gave the thing, like we had a clear plan of how many tickets we needed to get to and by when, worked backwards from there on the promotional side of things. And then just started mapping out like, we need an angle. We need a different hook. We need a better story, because everybody else events were a commodity. And so sure, we could just send a bunch of emails about this event, but like, what's the real reason? What's the reaction that we want out of people? And so David is amazing at this as CEO. It's just like really thinking through the story. And so we came up with this name, Hypergrowth event, because we wanted to make it not a really tactical day of marketing for our core audience, but we wanted to make it more inspirational, motivational. Like, this is a day that has nothing to do with marketing. It has everything to do with like helping you grow your career and, you know, your personal life. And so we're going to bring you speakers from all around life. We're going to bring you authors, and athletes, and entrepreneurs, and leaders, and salespeople. But this is not like, we almost came out very clearly and said, even though we sell marketing software, this is not a marketing conference. And I think, I don't know how to quantify it, but I think like having that clear take and positioning of the event ended up, you know, having the most ROI versus like, you know, it's not like we had some magic Facebook ad that we ran that like brought it in, or because I copied one of the SaaS sales that like we got more registration. I think it was because like we had this really clear take on the world. And through that, I've just kind of learned that like, it just pays in marketing to have an opinion. And like, I went from kind of just going with the flow, like even me, like how I do interviews now, I think is different, because I'm like, you know what, I'm going to give a real opinion and talk about who I really am, because things seem to resonate so much stronger with you, with your audience, if you can actually have an opinion. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to go to that event. But you do such a better job of actually cutting through the noise and getting people to pay attention with you if you can really speak clearly about who you're for and why.
Interesting. So your approach on, you know, even though you're marketing software, but the event is not a marketing conference, what about on the targeting side? Did you still target marketers to attend the conference?
We did, but like not specifically, right? That's who our audience was by default. And so like anytime you're going to market to that audience, most of the people that are going to sign up are those marketers. But we didn't like, it wasn't like, attention marketers, this is the event you should go to. It was more like, hey, you happen to be in our audience and you're marketers, so you might be interested in this. And we kind of had a feeling that like we could build an agenda around people that would be interesting to those types of people, without having to like do specific talks about like Facebook ads and email and video.
Take me through some of the conversations that led up to that decision, because I would imagine there was some pretty hardy debate around, should this be a marketing conference versus, you know, what you ended up with.
Because we launched the event, the event was not a sales event, like meaning we weren't doing the event because we had X number of, you know, dollars in revenue that we were trying to generate. It was strictly a brand play where we said, look, we do this amazing event and we just want to see what happens. And by the way, if you go and look at the numbers after, it was an amazing sales event for us, because like people actually did buy and we, you know, tracked the pipeline of those people after. But it isn't like, you know, come learn more about Drift and we're going to try to sell you more of our product on that day. And so there wasn't the pressure to like, you know, there wasn't like a big lounge where people were giving demos and the sales team was in blazers and ties trying to book meetings. It just didn't feel like that. And that was, you know, an amazing learning for me, marketer, from a brand perspective, and that like brand does drive demand if you do it right. So the thought was like, hey, in the early days where we could be out just asking people for money right now, let's just have an amazing event and have everybody talking about like, holy cow, Drift had 1,000 people. They had to call the fire marshal because we had people overflowing into the streets. Like, that's the story that we were trying to optimize for, not like, oh, we generated $1 million in revenue from it. And so I think that really made a difference up front, where it would have been much harder and we would have made different decisions if it was like, hey, we need to do an event that's going to generate $1 million. Like, I think it would have been a different.
Right. So I want to dig into a little bit of how Drift pulled that off, but I want to give a little context to my question first. So, you know, one thing that, you know, we're always talking about here at Harmon Brothers is that, you know, a new and young startup needs to have sales coming in the door to keep the lights on and keep people paid and all of that stuff, right? It's the lifeblood of the company. But as soon as they're able, they really need to start getting serious about building their brand, because the brand is what's going to sustain them for the long haul. It's the difference between, you know, a one-hit wonder like Snuggie, you know, who sells a bunch, but they never become a brand, versus something that stands the test of time, like, you know, a Nike or an Apple. Apple or something that, just gets stronger and stronger as time goes on. With Drift being a brand new company at that point, from a cash perspective, how did they pull off an event like that so early in their history? Did you guys already have kind of a base of sales that could support that? Or did you guys kind of have to take a little bit of a leap of faith with the investment around that event?
We had budget to do it. So the company's a venture-backed company, and they had raised a bunch of money, and as a Series A. And so we had budget to go out and do stuff with marketing, but we also charged for tickets. And I think we were pretty close to break even on that event in the first year. But yeah, we had budget to do it. I would say if you and I were bootstrapping a company, it probably wouldn't be the first thing that I would do would be to go try to do a 1,000-person event, because they're not cheap.
Right. So if you guys were already at Series A, that means that you had, a proven product and a customer base that brought the investor or gave the investors the confidence and the faith in the future of Drift in order for them to back that, right?
Right. And that was part of the reason that I joined in the first place, which is, hey, these are the two guys that started this company are proven entrepreneurs. This is the third company they'll have done together, and so they were able to raise money from people who didn't necessarily care about what they were going to go do. Like, hey, we believe in you guys as founders, so here's this check and go and build a company. And that's what I was able to just attach my wagon to. But yeah, it wasn't there was no money to go out and do an event. But I do think that even though I hear what you said about you got to have sales first, but I actually think the number one thing that we did at Drift in the early days was we built even before that event happened after I had already been there for years. And over the course of those 2 years, before we were even selling our product yet, we were building an audience, right? And so we were creating content. We had a podcast. We had a newsletter. And so even though people had no idea what the Drift product was, they started to know Drift. And so when we launched our event, it was perfect because we had this audience primed, and we said, hey, you've gotten to know us over the last 2 years. Well, guess what? We have an awesome opportunity for us to actually connect in real life now. Here's this story. And so I think no matter what you do in marketing, I think the number one thing that you have to do is to build an audience first, because it makes everything easier. It makes it easier. It makes events easier. It makes content easier. It makes everything you do easier. So I hear what you're saying on you got to have sales first. I actually think before you have sales, you have to build an audience.
Gotcha. Yeah, audience building is one of those things that I always look at as, I guess, an evergreen process that starts right at the beginning and it never ends. I don't know. What are your thoughts on audience building? Do you ever kind of shift focus from, okay, now we're in audience building mode, and now we're in, what's the next mode? How do you guys think about that?
I think it's got to be. I think you learn to juggle them both. Usually, you start off with audience building, and then at some point you move to sales, and then you have to be able to do those two things together, right? So, the way that you're going to build, and they're going to feed each other, right? Long-term sales is going to continue to be easier if you're also building an audience. So yes, you want to have a sales funnel and be able to sell stuff, but at the same time, you need to be, I think I said something a couple weeks ago on Twitter that it was Twitter's so weird about what gets picked up and not, but I tweeted, don't build a marketing team, build a media company for your niche. And I think that's really important, because I think every product in every industry, just given how much noise there is in the market right now, is a commodity. And you guys make videos. There's probably 1,000 other companies that but the unique opportunity is to differentiate through your brand and to build, to not just share it now costs X to buy a Harmon Brothers video, contact us today. No, you should own Harmon Brothers should own video, should own the topic of video marketing, and create mini shows for people who are interested, a podcast, video, blog, write the book on video marketing. And so you build a brand around this topic, And then, by the way, the people that are behind this topic also have something to sell you, and it's called our product. And so, like, that's the approach that I have learned and would take. And I think any company can really take that, no matter what you're doing. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm in Vermont. I'm at my in-laws' house, and my father-in-law is down there, and he's a carpenter. And if he was like, hey, I want to like do marketing and I want to help build a brand, before we even sold any of his services, the number one thing that I would do is position him as like a leader, start a YouTube channel about like do it yourself stuff at home. And he's creating it, right? Mm-hmm. Have him write like, 3 or 4 guides on the topic, do interviews on the topic, fill that web with video testimonials and like examples of him. And then, by the way, then we actually have something to sell you, which is him as a service. And so I think the bigger opportunity is to think about that. It's not even building an audience; it's to really turn your long-term marketing strategy into a media company. And then through that, people are going to know, like, and trust you, and that they're going to get more people to buy your stuff. First, the other option is you only basically have a sales page, or you only have a checkout button on your site. That's it. Like, why have anything else?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen so many examples of companies. I use Snuggie as an example, but we've even had a few of our clients who, they launch a sales campaign and it starts bringing money in the door, and they get all excited and they think they've made it, and it's like, oh wow, we're spending $1 and we're getting $3 coming back in the door, so we have our money printing machine, we're good to go. And then they get complacent and they don't do all of those things you talked about in terms of building the brand, building the audience, positioning themselves as experts in their niche, and that little bit of success ends up being so short-lived for them. So I couldn't agree with you more on the importance of this stuff.
No, like you mentioned, like use Russell Brunson and click